Hello, Ryan here with Mayday Games, and today I'm going to talk to you about Meteor, the real-time cooperative card game for 1 to 5 players that takes about 5 minutes long to play the game. And Meteor Storm is headed to Earth, and so we've got to destroy the meteors before they impact and we lose the game. So let me show you how it's played. Okay, let me go over a little bit how to play the game. So this is just a working prototype of the game. This is the final box art, but it is not the final art on the cards. In fact, the cards have changed significantly since we created this prototype. So bear that in mind. And this game is designed by Mike Young. Okay, so what we have here is we have altitude zone cards. So each altitude zone, as you see here, we count down, represents the impact from the meteors headed towards Earth. So each time we pass a zone, we'll reveal the next card. Okay. Right here, we have these 1-minute sand timers. Also, each 1-minute sand timer represents one altitude zone. So each time we change altitude zones, we draw new resource cards, which we'll have in our hand, and we'll also flip one of these sand timers. And each time that those altitudes change. Also, players may choose to pass if there's nothing else they can do on that turn. This allows them to draw cards, but it also changes altitude zone and gets those meteors closer to Earth. We also have a reference card here based on how many players there are, how many hand of cards they'll start with, and how many meteor cards will be faced with. Also, here on the back, how many cards we draw per zone change, as I just discussed. In Meteor, each player represents a launch site leader, and the space in front of each player will also be the player's launch site. There are 3 different projects that can be built in your launch site, and I'll go over those right now. The first thing you can build in your launch site are these rocket cards. Rocket cards are built to destroy the meteors. So as you see here, this is a strength 2 rocket that requires 2 red fuel. So if these 2 red fuel were played on this rocket, you would be able to launch that, and I'll explain that in a little more detail. The next thing you can build are technology cards. Once again, there's resources here located at the bottom. Once that technology is built, you're able to get the benefit of that technology. All players generally will get the same benefit. And in this case, each time an altitude zone change, each player will be able to draw a card. The next thing you can construct in your launch site area is a retrofit action. A retrofit action is used to convert 4 unusable resource cards into other resource cards. Retrofit actions are always 4 cards. So in this example here, if I were to lay down 4 resource cards, or other players were to play resource cards into my launch site area to where we have 4 of the matching resources, we would be able to retrofit this, discard these, and draw new cards. In this other example, we can also do that with rockets of the same number. Okay, they don't always have to be the same. You can also interchange them, as I show here. So if I have 4 different rockets in my area, that can be a retrofit action. Remember, you can only have 1 rocket being built in your launch site area at a time. So once you have more than 1 rocket down in your launch site area, this obviously shows the other players that you're going for a retrofit action. So once the retrofit action is complete, the team of players will draw 5 cards divided evenly. In the example of a 3-player game, each player would draw 1 card, and the player that performed the retrofit action would actually get 2 cards. So this is a way of seeding more cards into your hand if you feel like you're kind of stuck in destroying them. As you see here, a rocket has been completed requiring the 2 resources. Once a rocket is built, the controlling player of that launch site can determine when to launch that rocket. You do not have to launch the rocket immediately. Once you decide to launch the rocket, you verbally say to the other players, launch. You'll push your rocket towards the center, towards the meteors, and a rocket will always hit. It will never... There are 3 ways in which a rocket interacts with meteors. The first is which I previously showed you. Once a rocket is built, I launch it. I hit a meteor. This is a 2-strength rocket interacting with a 2-strength meteor. That meteor is destroyed. Or I can launch a 2-strength meteor at a larger rocket. In that case, it just simply bounces off. It will not destroy a rocket with a higher value. I can, however, destroy a meteor with a lower value than the rocket I launched. This, however, creates an overkill, and which is not a good thing. It destroys the blast, causes all the meteors to push closer to Earth. So in that case, we would advance an altitude zone by doing that. So always not really a good thing. This is a cooperative game, so if this launch site leader over here had a, oh, let me find the right ones. This person over here had a strength 3 rocket. I have my strength 2 rocket. We can both say launch. We combine the strengths of our rocket and we could take out this number 5 rocket. So 2 or more players may launch rockets at the same time, combine that strength and take out a meteor. As I said before, if you overkill a meteor, it will advance us an altitude zone, which could lose you the game. But if you do overkill a meteor on the last altitude zone, the number 1 altitude zone, it'll destroy the meteor, but it'll cause an overkill, but you'll still win the game in that particular case. So at this point, you're probably asking yourself, this really doesn't seem like a hard cooperative game. Well, what I showed you happened to be the beginner style of play. So here's the hitch. So in the beginner game, and how I would recommend you probably first play to get the understanding of the game, I have the meteors face up so we can see what we're dealing with. This meteor here, I forgot to point out earlier, this takes a yellow fuel-celled rocket to destroy. And these are kind of more just the basic meteors. There's also boss meteors that come in the game that make it a lot more interesting to destroy. What I didn't tell you, like I said, in the normal gameplay, all of these meteors start face down. So what we have here is we have just a little bit of information, not all the information. So we know that there's a 1 to 3 strength meteor here. We know there's a 3 to 5 strength meteor. My example earlier with launching a number 2 rocket at a higher strength meteor, that's what would happen. When you launch a rocket at a meteor, so I'd launch this 2 at this, you could do a reveal. As you see, it would do no damage because I launched a number 2 rocket at a 3 meteor, and this meteor also requires a yellow fuel rocket to destroy it. So in this case, the rocket, this would bounce off, this is discarded, but this stays face up. So now we know what we're dealing with here. All the while, the time's ticking down. Okay, here's the other tricky part of the game. Each launch site leader cannot speak to each other. Yeah, kind of difficult. So, as you're working to destroy these meteors, you're not communicating with each other. It's a silent game. So in this case, I'm for example, laying this rocket down. And part of the beauty of the game is letting other players play resources onto that. So if I lay this down, a fellow player can lay a yellow fuel cell down, and a player, say over here, can lay this down and help me out. Everything doesn't have to come from my hand of cards. There are technologies in the game, however, that once they are researched, allow all the players to talk to each other. And at that point, you can go over what you had. You can lay a card down and start saying, hey, I need a yellow card, I need a yellow card. But until then, you're just laying the card down and hoping that the other players can help you out if you don't have the cards in your hand. And trying to do all of this in that 5-minute time period. I would also like to mention that the game will come with boss meteors, like I mentioned before, so stronger meteors that we'll have to deal with. We have like a level 7 strength meteor and a couple other goodies, surprises that you'll have to deal with. We have other cards that will vary up the game, that'll give you bonus strengths to each player, give each player some abilities that will help them in the game to make the game perhaps a little bit easier if that's what you're looking for. We also have handicap cards which will make the game a little more difficult if you're wanting to up that level of intensity, if the game's becoming too easy or if you want that extra layer of challenge. You can add those in too. But for your first play, we recommend allowing the players to talk, leaving the meteors face up, just to give an idea of how the players play. Probably do it your first couple times and then play the normal game with the meteors face down and no talking. So that is Meteor, and like I said, the artwork has changed on the cards. The box art is still the same, but like I said, recommend playing it the beginner style to get used to it and then play the normal game. So that was a brief description of the game Meteor, and I hope I was able to give you a little bit of understanding of how the game plays. Obviously, there'll be more reviews coming out as I go, doing a much better job than I've done, but I hope I was able to give you a little glimpse into the game. There's a lot of replayability with it, like I mentioned in the video, with the power cards, the handicap cards, the boss meteor cards, and it's a very fast cooperative game, 5 minutes or less. And if you fail to save the Earth, go ahead and try again the next time. So we'd like to thank you for your support on our Kickstarter project, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.